Chapter 1. Mentality. If you don't want to make the enemy jungler retire, then go and play Tetris. You have the most influence on a game by creating a jungle diff. The first step to actually doing so is thinking so. The reason why every jungler below Challenger is not Challenger is because they don't actually think making the enemy jungler leave the game is a good idea. In this game, I know the enemy Nidalee is pathing towards her bot camp, so I set up a cheeky ambush on her blue buff. When she shows, I queue over, push her into my box, holding my E and ignite, and she ends up going 1 and 10. But Eagz is just a Shaco thing. Oh, you reckon? This is Kirei against Scrub Noob. Kirei's team is fighting in the enemy bot side jungle, and Rengar does not show at all. So the only option for Rengar is to start blue. Knowing Rengar will be lower HP, probably with no smite for Gromp, Kirei invades Scrub Noob, steals Gromp, gets his flash, and the jungle is already close to being over.
I'm really being level 2 invaded on my blue side by an Elise?
This is Chaos, multiple rank 1 EU West, and by far the best player I've coached. He is against a Karthus who loves to start blue buff, so he does Raptors, blast cones into this blue buff brush, and waits for Karthus to leash the Gromp. He Qs in, steals Gromp, holding W for as long as possible, knowing Karthus has flash, and the jungle is close to being over. He then does Wolves to hit level 3, and moves through mid to Karthus' bot side. Can you guess what happens in the next 30 seconds? Chaos kills Karthus again, and blue team is typing jungle diff. This is Velia. As he finishes Raptors, he knows the enemy Viego, who is already weaker, is chasing his mid laner around his bot side jungle. This delays Viego getting to his top camp, so Velia takes Crab before doing Viego's walls, and then evades vision knowing Viego will do his Gromp after realizing his walls are missing. Who wouldn't? Because Velia is thinking about Viego, he is able to create this situation, and he kills him for a second time in this game. But what about if you can't kill the enemy jungler? If you can't physically stop the enemy jungler by killing them, then you have to stop them by alerting your teammates where their location is and where their location is probably going to be. In this game, after I show on the map killing the enemy bot lane, the enemy Graves will be thinking about taking my respawning top camps. So as I recall, I spam ping the Graves' intention and get my Blitzcrank to do my job for me until I get there. Instead of being the only one on your team aware of where the enemy jungler is, it can be 5 of you. This empowers your teammates and makes the game 10 times easier. In this bronze game, Diana knows after seeing bot Crab alive that the enemy Master Yi is topside, but she doesn't ping at all, and the Malphite dies. If Malphite starts flaming Diana, he has every right to do so, because Diana wasn't doing her job. Listen to Kirei for me.
I didn't ping my top lane, to be careful there. That's my bad. If someone in my team dies and I didn't ping, that's like basically on you as a jungler.
Now, before you ask me what about laners and ganking them, of course that's huge. You're looking at a Shaco main. And I'll teach you how to get a kill every time you gank later in the course. But if you can't take care of your jungle matchup, then nothing else matters. And we ain't talking the song by Metallica. Proactive, reactive, full clearing, ganking. The only playstyle that works? Listening to the enemy champions. Do you really think I could tell you to just full clear and all of a sudden you're a challenger? It doesn't do anything. And the number of players I've had to coach after being told to full clear all the time is kind of unreal. So please just listen. The actual difference between challenger junglers to everyone else is how they react to information they collect. After I killed this Kha'Zix on my blue buff, how many of you would do Gromp afterwards? Your reaction is different to mine. I killed the Kha'Zix for a second time in about 60 seconds. Why? Because I am listening to him more than you. Kha'Zix is saying, I have red buff and 12 CS. So I did my whole top side and then ganked mid. Then I tried to take your blue buff Shaco. So my whole bot side is up here. That's where I will go when I respawn. So I process all of that information and say to myself, well, I'm a refreshed red buff Shaco with serrated Dirk. I know I easily beat you in a 1v1 Kha'Zix and I have your 3 bot camps to do it on. And yeah, he dies again. In this game, Chaos runs out of base with his serrated Dirk, and the enemy Vi with no items is farming mid. Chaos looks at the Vi and she's less than half HP, and then sees the Vi run towards her Raptors. So what is Vi saying? Hey Chaos, I'm running to Raptors to do them, and then probably my Krugs afterwards. If you want to kill me with your serrated Dirk, no worries, so it should come as no surprise when Chaos kills the Vi on her Krugs. If I rewind this, how many of you would do your top camps? A lot of you. Stop thinking about vague and nebulous concepts like resetting your camps or pathing for your win con and start thinking about the information the enemy champions are giving you, in particular the enemy jungler. In this Emerald game, the Rengar picks up 2 kills and 2 assists from this fight, recalls, and runs out of base with a serrated Dirk and longsword. He's so fed. As he is running out of base, the enemy Udyr is doing the same thing, most likely pathing towards his Raptors because he started on his top side. So Rengar does the crab, making sure to deny Udyr, and then does his Gromp and Wolves. This is all excellent, but with this juicy trinket on Udyr's Gromp, what can the stupidly fed Rengar do after his Raptors? Well, why not run at the much weaker Udyr, who is definitely going to do his Gromp? It's just that Rengar wasn't listening to Udyr enough, so he does his Krugs. The amount of opportunities you miss is infinite, because you are limiting yourself by committing to a premeditated playstyle. How can you stay the same when the environment around you is always changing? You have to change or you're gonna get left behind. Chapter 3, Knowledge is Power. The first step to jungling like a god is gathering information. How do we do that? Well, as junglers, we have 6 tools we can use to collect information about the enemy champions and our friendly champions, our teammates. The most important tool is the minimap. When you are not dealing damage, you should be looking at the minimap. So when you are kiting a camp, you look at the minimap. When you are running out of base, you are looking at the minimap. After a gank, you are looking at the minimap. We are literally playing a game on a map. So if we have no idea about what is happening on that map, we are never going to optimize our decisions. To perfect this skill, get in a practice tool and clear your camps. Each time you click back to kite the camp, look at the minimap. Do this until your eyes bleed. Your eyes are muscles and can be trained. In this clip, count how many times I look at the minimap for me. 1, 2, 3, that's close to 1 every second. Create that muscle memory and GG. The next tool we need to use to our advantage is just above the minimap, the 4 idiots. Your teammates' icons are invaluable. Why is that? Well, in this game, Igurin's teammates are all full HP and full mana, which typically means they aren't really interacting with the enemy champions, so you can safely assume the enemy champions are also full HP and full mana. But in this game, as I finish my blue buff, I see the enemy Silas jump onto my Xerath. Now, I am sure he's not doing this to sniff the Xerath, so I know HP and mana will be traded, which it is. Xerath loses a little bit of HP above the minimap, but can you see how important it is to actually look at the enemy champions? Silas lost way more HP in that trade. If I don't move my camera to look at the enemy Silas, I would have no idea what HP he is and how much mana he has. So if looking at the minimap is the first skill, looking above the minimap is the second skill, looking at the enemy champions using F keys if they are fighting your teammates, or panning your mouse over the minimap onto them and then left clicking, this is the third skill. I combine literally all 3 in this clip. I look at the minimap when I'm not dealing damage to blue buff, and I see the enemy Silas engage. To make sure I know what his HP and mana are after the fight, I look above the minimap at my Xerath and see that he's lost HP. So I confirm the Silas has also lost HP by pressing F3, which is my hotkey for mid lane. This kill has nothing to do with me playing Shaco and exhibiting a ganking playstyle. It has everything to do with me listening to the enemy champions and collecting information. In this diamond game, we see the enemy Evelynn topside. So we know we have a 2v1 mid and a 3v2 bot. So what does Lilia need to do before making a decision? She needs to collect information on the surrounding lanes. If we look at the minimap, skill number 1, we can see that Zed is pushed up, meaning we have a lot of space to chase him. Then if we look above the minimap at the 4 idiots, skill number 2, we can see that Taliyah is close to half HP and about a quarter mana. So surely the Zed would be similar HP, and maybe he's used a lot of energy using his spells. But Lilia does not use skill number 3, which is F-keying to her teammates. Taliyah in this case, or actually panning her mouse over the Zed on the minimap and then left clicking. This would show the Zed's real HP and potentially his spells, and a Zed without W is very different to a Zed with W. But mid is not the only lane Lilia is near. Using skill number 1, looking at the minimap, the enemy bot lane is pushed up. Great, that means Lilia has a lot of time and space to damage them. Then if we use skill number 2, looking at the 4 idiots above the minimap, Kog and Hui are barely half HP and pretty low on mana. So if that's the case, the enemy champions are probably missing similar HP and mana. But Lilia does not use skill number 3 again, actually looking at the enemy champions. Because Lilia is playing without that crucial information, she cannot make optimal decisions and waste time doing the crab, and when she does eventually look bot, look at the Jin's HP. Imagine if she just went straight there. The 4th tool is the top right, the game time. I will elaborate on why this is so important in the next chapter, but for now, the game time represents resources. If I say 20 minutes, you say Atakan. If I say 25 minutes, you say Baron. Knowing these timings is knowing where champions will be, and therefore, we have more information. The 5th tool is the scoreboard. Why is this important? Well, for junglers, it helps us hyper-track the enemy jungler because it tells us their CS. Whenever a champion shows on the minimap, even for a millisecond, their CS will update on the scoreboard, as will their level and items. For junglers, each camp is worth 4 CS. Buffs, the standard camps, dragon, grubs, if you take an entire camp, it adds 4 CS. This is so important because jungle camps are coordinates. Where a jungle camp is, a jungler is, most likely. In this game though, against this Master Career Lee Sin, he shows bot and I press tab immediately to determine his camps. So at this stage he has 32 CS. So he full cleared with the top crab and then did his raptors again and then probably recalled. So I know his top camps are up here because it doesn't say 40 CS. By pressing tab as soon as you see the enemy jungler show on the minimap, you will feel the power. The last tool not many players know about nor use is the enemy HUD in the top left. This is very useful for two specific reasons. It tells us the enemy CS, just like the scoreboard does, but it also lets us know about runes and effects on a champion. The most important one to be aware of is bone plating. In this game when Canyon ganks this Aatrox, we can see Aatrox's bone plating is showing on his HUD. This means it has already been procced, so we don't have to worry about saving our big damage until bone plating expires. Not that it really matters for Skarner, but you get my point. Chapter 4, the reaction. The first step to jungling like a god is gathering information. The second step is reacting like a god. Basically, your reaction is the decision you make to the information you have, but this is the easiest process because when you have collected all the possible information, the decision you should make becomes so obvious. In this game, I know the enemy Lee Sin has gone from his raptors straight to his blue buff. I know Lee Sin will be around half HP on his Gromp by the time I get here because he doesn't like clearing single monster camps, and Gromp is the natural progression after his blue buff. So as a red buff Shaco with Hella Blades and Ignite, what is my reaction to all this information? To go kill him. How easy is that? But this is why all of the chapters in this guide have to be abided by. This starts with wanting to destroy the enemy Lee Sin, whether that's directly by killing him or indirectly by pinging his location non-stop and taking his camps when he's nowhere near them. It continues with me being flexible in terms of my decision making. I'm listening to the enemy champions and they will keep updating me on what my next play is. I then gather as much information as possible by looking at the minimap, at the 4 idiots, the enemy champions, the game time, the scoreboard, the enemy HUD if possible, and all this gets thrown into a pot and out pops a message saying go and kill the enemy Lee Sin. If we keep going, the Lee Sin I just killed knows I will take his Gromp, so the only other camp he has up topside is his wolf camp, and it's risky to run here because I could take wolves after Gromp. I also know Lee Sin has his red buff and Krugs up on his bot side, and this is where he will definitely run. So my reaction to this information is so easy. I recall and buy a pickaxe with my level 3 and sprinted Lee Sin's red buff, and guess what? He dies again. This dude is in Master Career. Chapter 5. Jungle timings. How long it takes a jungle camp to respawn is the foundation to knowing jungle timings. So let's start with the respawn timers. The standard jungle camps, Krugs, Raptors, Wolves, and Gromp, respawn every 2 minutes 15 seconds after being killed. To make it easier, you can just say 2 minutes and a little bit extra. For Scuttle Crabs, only one will respawn after the first 2 are taken after 2.5 minutes in either river. For Grubs, the second set of Grubs respawn 4 minutes after the first set has been killed. For Red and Blue buff and the Dragon, these respawn 5 minutes after being killed. For Baron, and this respawns 6 minutes after being killed. One more timing to be aware of. Getting back on the map after recalling can take around 20 to 30 seconds depending on where it is you are running. So let's say it takes 30 seconds to recall and get back on the map. Now for the actual jungle timings, write these down and memorize them. And uninstall that stupid Professor app. 110. You can put a trinket down on your second buff at this time because you're scared the enemy jungler might invade you. 125 is the time to start your late invades. 130, this is when both buffs spawn along with raptors and wolves. These will be your starting camps. 150, this is when junglers can level 2 invade or gank. 230, this is when junglers typically hit level 3 and can decide to either gank, invade, or cross over to their second quadrant through mid lane. 330, both Scuttle Crabs will spawn, and junglers who have full cleared will hit level 4. 350, this is the ideal time to recall and run at your first camp. This is applicable to junglers who start at a buff and then do either Krugs or Gromp next. 4 minutes, if you started at Raptors or Wolves, they will respawn at this time. 420, if a jungler started at a buff, Krugs or Gromp, the next camp after the buff, will respawn around this time. 5 minutes, this is when Dragon spawns, but it's perhaps more important to know that a jungler's second quadrant respawns at this time if they cleared all their camps initially, so they will be crossing through mid for a second time to re-clear those. 530, this is the latest time to recall to be on the map active for the first set of grubs spawning at 6 minutes. 630, if a jungler started at their raptors and re-cleared them again around 410, 415, they will respawn for a second time around 630. 645, if a jungler has just been clearing, then their first quadrant will respawn for a second time starting around this time, especially their first buff. 8 minutes, a jungler's second quadrant will be respawning for a second time if they have just been clearing, especially their second buff. 15 minutes, FF, 16 minutes, Rift Herald, 20 minutes, Akatar, 25 minutes, Baron. Let me show you some examples of jungle timing abuse. In this game, scenario starts at Viego's Raptors, meaning these Raptors will respawn at what time? Around 4 minutes. So after clearing a few more camps, Scenarios recalls after his walls, knowing that Viego could defend his respawning Raptors. So if Scenarios attacks them again, he wants to be as strong as possible for that potential fight. In this game, I died to the Graves on my Raptors. Whoops. I know Graves has 28 CS, and to kill me on Raptors at around 430, he had to have started on his bot camps and then moved towards his top side full clearing with the top crab. Because Graves likes to start at buffs, he most likely started red buff and then did Krugs afterwards. This means his Krugs respawn at 420 and his Raptors will respawn about 20 seconds later around 440. If you look at the game time, it's that time already. So I know Graves will recall here to spend his gold, and he will most likely repeat his clear initially, which was Krugs after red, then Raptors. History repeats itself, don't ever forget that. So while the Graves is farming Krugs, as a Talon with a Dirk and Longsword, I know I can run to his Raptors and take them if they are there because Graves is on his Krugs. And after doing them, I can wait in the Raptors brush and kill him. Remember, jungle camps are coordinates. If you know when they spawn, then you know where the enemy jungler will be. In this game, Dante's recalls after killing the enemy Cho'Gath because his Gromp is spawning at 420. It takes around 30 seconds to recall and get back on the map, so the timing is perfect. It's just that he does the bot crab first, which is another topic we will get into very soon. In this game, Chaos is going to do his Raptors and Krugs again despite not having recalled, because they are right next to him, so it's quicker to do them now, and this will also mean that by the time he finishes Krugs, the time is just before 5:30, which is the latest time to recall and run at Grubs, which is exactly what Chaos does. He is as strong as he can possibly be for a potential fight, or to create counterplay on the bot side of the map if he cannot contest Grubs. Chapter 6, Tempo. This concept is so easy to understand when we ask ourselves this question: which jungler will get to that resource first? That's all tempo is. So if both junglers full clear, they have the same tempo. They are each clearing their first, second, third camps, etc. at the same time. But it gets a lot harder to track tempo the moment both junglers stop just clearing their own camps. So in the same example I showed earlier, the Kha'Zix decides to gank mid lane instead of farming his walls and bot camps. This means that I am ahead of him in terms of camp tempo because I have 16 CS, 4 camps, compared to his 12 CS, 3 camps. Now after he ganks mid, we know what happens. I kill him on my blue buff. Even though the cockroach's tempo to my blue buff is quicker, I can still easily get there in time to kill him. We then ask the question, what resource is Kha'Zix going to run to next? Where is his tempo? Well, at a base, he only has his bot camps up, and there are 3 of them. So yes, Kha'Zix might get there before I do after I recall and buy, but he will not clear all 3 of these before I get there. So my tempo corresponds with the enemy junglers, allowing me to meet him at these resources and knock him out again. In this game, Canyon is clearing Raptors and sees the enemy Vi recalling. So Canyon could think about invading Vi's bot side, knowing he will get to her Raptors before her, but it's just a Raptor camp, and we don't even know if it's up or not. So if we are not going to time our movement, our tempo, for the enemy jungler's bot camps, what's another timer we can orientate our gameplay towards? Well, Canyon even pings it, the dragon. He does walls, knowing he has time to, so he maximizes his gold for that recall, and then makes his way to the respawning dragon as strong as he can possibly be. In this game, I get off Rift Herald and kill the enemy Jace. So now the question is, what resource is the enemy Lee Sin going to run at? Well, after seeing me show top lane, if he is bot side of the map or crossing over to it, he will definitely think of countering my top play by running at either my bot camps, dragon, or my bot lane. I would definitely not be happy with the weaker Lee Sin taking my bot camps, nor making a play on my bot lane, so I fake to run to Rift and then Q and recall over this wall. I know that even if Lee Sin has quicker tempo to my bot camps and takes 1 or 2 of them, I will kill him and take dragon and maybe even dive his bot lane afterwards. On top of all of that, is Rift Herald going anywhere? No. This is the key to jungling, timing your movement around the map. Chapter 7, Accelerated Jungling. It's easier if I show you what this is first, and then I'll explain it. In this game, Canyon is doing grubs and the enemy jungler knows this. So what option does the enemy jungler have to counter this? Well, if they are going to lose grubs, they need to take something away from the blue team to trade. This should start with Canyon's bot camps, because in the early game, but Canyon knows this, and he accelerates his jungling by skipping his top camps, and he runs straight to Raptors to protect them. It's the same in this clip too. If he was to farm his Gromp and then walls, he gives so much time to the enemy jungler jungler to take his bot camps. It should come as no surprise when he finishes his Raptors to see the enemy Kindred nearby. In this game, after Kanavi finishes his red buff, he knows he cannot contest the Rift Herald when the enemy Hui support is closer to a potential fight than the friendly Bard. So he moves towards bot side and accelerates his jungling by skipping his camps and instead does Dragon. Now he would also skip this, but notice how the enemy's bot camps and AD carry are missing here. He would definitely kill these first and then come back to Dragon, but Dragon is good enough, and his Varus is getting a tower on top of that. In this game, as I do Wolves, the enemy Mordekaiser has moved into River from top lane, and my weak Gwen is recalling mid, thereby giving the enemy Yasuo prio. So what does this all mean? This means I can never contest Grubs, so I accelerate my jungling by skipping Gromp and then Krugs, and instead I just kill the enemy Jinx. Thresh ends up dying soon after. If I hit my Gromp after Wolves, it would be ban worthy. So what does accelerated jungling really mean? When the enemy jungler is threatening to take your camps or objectives in River or killing your teammates on the other side of the map, you must react at the same time and either stop that play from happening directly, just like Canyon did, running to his bot camps, or you create a trade of resources on the other side of the map, just like Eagz and Kanavi did. In this master game, the Evelynn knows she cannot contest Rift Herald, so she needs to accelerate her jungling by skipping her Krugs and moving towards the enemy bot side of the map, looking to either take the enemy jungler's camps or kill the isolated side laner in the bot lane. Unfortunately, she does Krugs and gets nothing in return for the enemy team doing Rift Herald. In this diamond game, the Gwen sees 3 enemy champions ganking her Tryndamere, including the enemy support. This means the enemy AD carriers on their own, so she could accelerate her jungling by skipping her blue buff and the bot crab and move towards the isolated Corki, or potentially take the enemy jungler's bot camps. Instead, she runs towards the Tryndamere, who is never going to die, and misses a big opportunity. Accelerate your jungling. Chapter 8, out to in. Look at this map. I've divided it into 3 sections: the enemy jungler's quadrants, the river and the river objectives, and your own quadrants. The most important quadrants are the enemy jungler's quadrants, the out part of the equation. This is because they deny the enemy jungler and create a difference between you and your opponent in terms of golden experience, unless of course they are doing the same to you. So in this game, I know the enemy Lee Sin is likely on Grubs, so while he is on Grubs, I decide to move out before I do my Gromp. This is critical because the longer I don't do Lee Sin's camps, the longer I am giving him to eventually protect them. So I check his Raptors and they are up. I then do his Krugs and then kill the enemy center support. I got all of this in exchange for Grubs. If I rewind this, how many of you would do Gromp after Wolves and then maybe Dragon? These are nowhere near as jungle diff as me taking Lee's entire bot camps and killing one of his teammates. And if I really wanted to do Gromp or Dragon, I can always come back to do these resources afterwards. Remember, out to in. But sometimes it won't be as easy as that. In my game, the enemy support is bot lane and the enemy jungler does not show, so I can safely assume they are doing Grubs and will do them very quickly, so I have to react quickly myself. So in Kanavi's game, he runs out of base and suddenly it's 6 minutes. He knows he is giving up Grubs here, so how do we react to that information? Well, we need to think of going out to in, but Kanavi can drive by walls first because he does them so quick, and all of a sudden, the enemy Skarner ganks top lane, meaning he is not doing Grubs. So because Skarner taking Grubs is now delayed, Kanavi can actually optimize his own side of the jungle by doing Gromp after walls, sequencing them together, and then he can invade the enemy bot camps knowing he will still get them. If Skarner did not show ganking top, he has to invade Skarner's bot camps after walls. So he does Skarner's Raptors, Krugs, and kills the enemy Ezreal after hitting level 6 out to in. But there will be times when you can't take the enemy jungler's bot camps and you can't kill the enemy bot lane. So for Canyon in this game, after doing Krugs, we know that on his HP, it's impossible for him to contest the healthy enemy Zyra on Grubs. So if Canyon is giving up Grubs in the near future, we have to go out to in. But in this game, Zyra has been pathing from bot to top, and given the fact it's already past 5:30, it's safe to assume Zyra will be on her second quadrant again, having cleared her first quadrant, her bot side. So Zyra's Raptors and Krugs are 100% gone, and there is no point in even checking them. But what about the enemy bot lane? If Zyra is topside, then Canyon can 3v2 the enemy bot, but his Alistar just dies, and it's way too flippy to run into a pretty healthy misfortune with her Leona right next to her, especially when Canyon is barely half HP. So Canyon does the next best thing, the Dragon. The more time he spends not doing the Dragon, so doing his bot camps for instance, the more time he is not only giving Zyra to run through mid to cover the Dragon, he is also giving that time to the stronger enemy bot lane to potentially rotate up. In this game, after Dante's recalls, why do you think he doesn't do his Gromp here? It's because he might lose the crab to the enemy jungler. By doing crab first, not only do we add to our own golden experience, but we also deny the enemy jungler that golden experience as well. By thinking about the camps that are further out first, we give ourselves a chance at creating a jungle diff. Chapter 9, Early Clears. Where do we start in a game? This is literally the only pathing you can premeditate, and you can figure this out before the game actually starts. So there are 4 starting camps, providing you're not late invading, these being red and blue buff and raptors and wolves. Red and raptors are in the same quadrant as our blue and wolves, so how do we decide which camp to start at? Well, that depends on where you want to path, and you should be pathing towards the lane that can snowball the most out of top and bot lane. Mid lane is always there to be ganked, so you don't have to worry about pathing to mid. When you have answered where you want to path, you then know which quadrant you are going to start at. But then you need to decide between red or raptors or blue or wolves. Starting red buff or blue buff is great for 3 reasons. First reason, you clear buffs a lot easier than you do raptors and wolves. For example, you might be a Warwick, a Rengar, or a Trundle. Second reason, you don't need the extra gold from clearing raptors and Krugs again, or wolves and Gromp again for a strong early game item. Third reason, you're not scared of getting late invaded at level 1 on your buff, or at level 2 on your Krugs or Gromp after you do your buff. So let me explain this. If you start raptors or wolves, just like I do, they will respawn at 4 minutes, or just before. So by the time you full clear with the opposite crab, it's already 340, 345. This means you have 15 seconds until your raptors or wolves respawn. So if you recall here, and the enemy jungler is anticipating your raptors or wolves respawning, they can just sit here and then take them for free when they respawn. You will still be running out of base. So you have to run from the crab you have done to your respawning raptors and wolves, and redo them before backing. Same for Krugs and Gromp. If you do raptors and Krugs, you will be on close to 1200 gold. If you do wolves and Gromp, you will be on around 1100 gold, and this is enough for a Dirk, Alternator, Balmy Cinder, maybe even a Blasting Wand and Dark Seal, and lots of junglers would make good use of this. The other advantage starting raptors or wolves boasts is that you don't need to smite either camp. You can clear these quickly, and by holding smite you have it for Krugs or Gromp. This means that if the enemy jungler invades you on either one of these camps, you can smite the camp in happy days. You avoid any sort of cheese, and you're 1 camp from level 3. There is one variation though to the raptors or wolves start you need to be aware of. If you are starting raptors like Kanavi in this game, and you feel as if you don't conclusively win the 1v1 against the enemy jungler, recalling after clearing your first quadrant and buying a longsword or Dark Seal makes you a lot stronger and gives you better fighting chances. Do this if you're scared of getting invaded on your second quadrant. The rest of your pathing is dictated by what? The enemy champions and the information you collect. There are no set rules here. Chapter 10, Ganking. Now of course, killing the enemy laners, like who wouldn't want to do that? That's on every jungler's menu. But how do we decide when to gank and when not to gank? Well, I'll give you a hint. It isn't when your laners start spam pinging you for assistance. We gank to kill. That's it. The next question, how do we know a gank is going to result in a kill? Well, let me show you some examples. I've showed this clip before. As I'm doing my blue buff this game, can you see this wave? Because I am parallel with this wave, I know that when I finish my blue buff, this wave will be in mid lane. Therefore, the enemy Sylas will also be in mid lane. The first step to ganking and killing is knowing if the enemy champion will actually be there when you gank. The Sylas is not going to leave mid when there is a wave right in front of him. Otherwise, he might lose key gold and experience in the early game and fall behind quickly. So as I finish blue buff, I know Sylas will be mid, but I need to make sure I can deal enough damage to kill him. I don't want to show on the minimap and potentially lose this bot crab without getting a kill. So I use my F key attached to my mid laner and see the Sylas is about half HP. Being an early game Shaco, I know I have enough damage to kill this Sylas before he is out of range, which is what we do. You could replace Shaco with any jungler and still get this kill. But it's not that simple because someone else has to be considered every time you gank. This is the enemy jungler. If I gank mid, it's almost impossible, well it is impossible, for Lee Sin to protect the Sylas before he dies. If I were to gank the enemy bot lane on the other hand, the Samira is close to full HP, has cleanse, flash, a support right next to her, and her jungler potentially waiting in fog, expecting the early game Shaq to gank whatever lane is pushed up. But what about if I was finishing my blue buff and all of a sudden Lee Sin showed ganking top? Can I now gank bot lane? Of course, it's a 3v2. But there is one more critical detail you have to take into account before ganking: enemy vision. Because the enemy bot lane is pushed further up, it means their vision will push further up too. Therefore, this pixel brush is likely warded. So after my blue buff, would I run through river? No, because I'm not ganking to scare the enemy champions away. I want to kill them, so I would run into the enemy bot side jungle and gank the enemy bot lane from their tri-brush. This also maximizes my chance of killing the enemy champions because they have to run through me and my damage to get to safety. If I was to gank through the river and show on a vision, I would just be chasing them and likely dealing no damage. In this game, Canyon does raptors and decides to gank top lane, but why? There is a wave close to entering the lanes, which means the enemy champions are going to be in lane. Because Canyon knows Aatrox is pushing pushing the top wave further away from his safety, Canyon finishes Raptors and decides to gank that lane. In addition, Aatrox has no flash, and this is just a very easy kill, gank on waves. After Nemesis dies to Zeus, Zeus decides to shove the next wave. By the time he kills the last minion, I'm going to draw a line from the furthest red minion to just outside this tower range, and then I'm going to draw a line from the furthest blue minion of the next wave to the same position. Which minion gets there first? They probably get there at a very similar time. This would be terrible for Zeus because both minions would collide outside the tower range, and Nemesis can freeze the lane in that position, and Zeus will get jungle gang for the rest of the game. Canyon, the friendly Lee Sin, knows this, which is why after his Krugs, he ganks Zeus trying to crash the wave, and what do you know? They kill the Jax. Gank on waves. Chapter 11, Micro. There is no macro without Grey Micro. In this gold game, the Grave starts to clear his walls, but auto-attacks the small walls way too many times. He finishes walls at 3 minutes 4 seconds. If we compare that to Tarzane, he finishes walls at 2 minutes 47 seconds. That's close to 20 seconds. The biggest difference between high elo junglers and low elo junglers, well, one of them anyway, is the speed in which they clear their camps and how they actually do that. By clearing efficiently, you have more time on the map to pressure the enemy champions, and it's also harder for the enemy jungler to punish you because you're so efficient around the jungle. So if you cannot full clear by 3 minutes 30 on any champion, please go into a practice tool and perfect your clear before you even think of queuing up for your next rank game. In this platinum game, the Viego decides to lane gank bot. This decision is great. His Leona has locked down the Tahm Kench, and as a Viego with gap closing from his E's movement speed, his W's dash, and his flash, he can easily catch up and kill the CC'd Kench. So what should he do now? He should use his W and flash on the Tahm, and he gets a free kill, but he doesn't. He goes for the full HP Brand, who will never lose all of his HP here, so the Viego essentially wastes 15 seconds going for this play. In this game, when I decide to queue in for this Jinx, this is a kill. But how do I know this? Well, I know I have the damage to get through our health bar, and I also know I can dodge anything the enemy champions throw at me. I anticipate her W, so I quickly move to the side. And when I show backstabbing the Jinx, the enemy Thresh is not just going to sit there taking a picture. He will react to my backstabbing. So when I see the Thresh's brain trigger, I put a box down to block his hook and kill the Jinx. In this game, when Kanavi ganks mid lane, he can go for the Katarina, but she just picked up her dagger and can E away. So the only target really is Nautilus. This guy probably queued in, so he can only flash out. So Kanavi uses his Q and flash to give Naut less time to react to the instant explosion off the wall, and holds his E, knowing he can use it to dodge the Viego's response, this being the Viego's W. Don't be naive and think your micro is perfect. It's a massive part of League. If you learned something from the video, please leave a like down below. Kind of took a long time to make, so I'm probably going to hunt you down if you don't. Any questions, leave comments down below. Join the Discord, of course, for more updates, and God knows how much content in Season 15. Let's get it, and don't be shy. Bye.